It's the Flow Friday Night Sports Show, and unfortunately for us, there's no baseball this weekend to speak about in the ABL. That is still plenty of baseball going on in local competitions across our Flow network and beyond. And joining us on the line at the moment to help us decipher what on earth happened last week, it is Dave Penrose from Baseball Australia. Dave, how are you, mate?
Going very well, thank you.
Now, unfortunately, the ABL season, or finals series, I should say, the playoffs, were cut short due to the situation in Victoria, which has resolved itself quick as a flash, and everything's open, and you can have crowds again now, and tennis and the like. But unfortunately, we didn't know any of this last week, and the ABL had a difficult decision to make, didn't it?
Yeah, they certainly did. I mean, it was always the risk. It wouldn't have mattered where you hold the playoffs. There was always going to be risk with COVID around, and we ended up in Melbourne for a number of reasons, and unfortunately the outbreak there, with the hotel quarantine and the impact of that, and them going into their shutdown for 5 days, meant that we had to put an early end to the playoffs. But we had a number of protocols that existed should that issue arise. So it still ended in a reasonably fair, I would say, result. But one that it would have been nice to go the journey, because it was a fun little playoff series that we had going. Yeah,
it was a very interesting playoff series we had going, a unique format on the back of an already COVID-affected season. So we'll just do a quick recap before we talk about the final and how the last day of the season played out. But so when we went to the finals, we started with 5 of the 6 clubs who qualified. And I believe, if you can get them in order for me, it was top of the ladder was Melbourne, of course. Then I think Perth came in second. Adelaide were third. The Canberra Cavalry finished in 4th spot, and the Blue Sox 5th. Or have I got those last 2 the wrong way around?
No, you've got that 100% the right way around there. So that's good. When that's a trivia question in a few years, you're looking good.
The Blue Sox, of course, played the Cavalry in the knockout final, and it was the Cavalry that marched on, right?
That's right. So, the wildcard kings, the Canberra Cavalry, 3 from 3, they made it there against Sydney.
That's right. So the Cavalry then joined the other 3 teams in waiting, and we were working on a double elimination, basically. That was the plan, was it not?
That's right. It's a double elimination, which is very college baseball and to some extent also Little League baseball as well. So a bit of fun with those 4 teams remaining, and a double chance for all of them up until the point of the single game championship game.
That's right. So if we look back to it, we saw the Adelaide Giants go down in a screaming heap. We talked about this last week, but they were absolutely destroyed by the Perth Heat. The Cavalry went down to Melbourne, I think. So it was Adelaide and the Cavalry due to face off in a match that saw the loser bow out. And then it was Perth taking on Melbourne, with both of those sides having another chance should they lose. But then the news come through about the Melbourne lockdown. Is that how it played out?
That's correct. So at the very time of the first pitch in that Canberra and Adelaide Giants game, with then sudden death game for them, had the press conference with Dan Andrews happening at that very time and announcing that they'd be heading into lockdown. So obviously there'd been, that speculation the morning of, and those players were privy to that and aware of that. So they went out there to play their game, knowing that they could come off, win or lose. It would be the end of it. It was a really unique set of circumstances.
It was, and I've got to say, in that game, we sort of touched on it last week, but it was only very fresh. It had just finished. And the Giants, a wasted season for them, you could say. They went down in that game to the Canberra Cavalry, but both sides there put on a bit of a show, and it was good to see their pitchers in form in that game, which hadn't been the case in other parts of the playoffs.
Yeah, they were really evenly matched. I mean, it was the first time we'd seen them take each other on this season, due to the nature of the regular season and various teams not being able to travel and various other teams being in hubs. So it was a bit of a pitcher's duel, really. Canberra got the jump early. Mikey Reynolds did a bit of damage against his old team, and they scored the first 3 runs. And Adelaide threatened late. It looked, as they've done so many times, that they might pull off a miraculous comeback. That they fell that 1 run short, just weren't able to get it done. So probably the story of the season, really, for them. The pitching was there for the most part, but just the offense not quite consistent enough.
Yeah, that is definitely the case with the Giants. They've got some work to do in that area before season 2022. Hopefully won't be affected by COVID as much as it has. But Look, they keep doing this, the Giants. They keep getting to the playoffs, looking okay, and then falling in a screaming heap. But either way, both sides' season was over, as we knew before the last match of the season was played. So, ironically, we got to that evening, and the two best teams in the competition were facing off against each other in the championship game. The Melbourne Aces looking to go back-to-back against the Perth Heat, and it was, in the end, the Aces prevailing once more. It was. So it was another game that really looking forward to. Two teams that they'd only played once during the regular season. That was back on New Year's Eve, and it was a 1-0 game that was decided quite late, went in the Aces' favour. So, as you said, they were the top two teams throughout the regular season, despite not playing each other that much. So they haven't seen a lot of each other live, but Melbourne Aces just able to get it done 9-2, and it was tight early. It was really tight through 5. They had a 2-0 lead, and Perth were able to bring a run back in the top of the 6th, but then Melbourne Aces blew it open with 7 runs in the bottom of that inning. So in pretty emphatic fashion, and in actual fact, they scored all 9 of their runs with 2 out. So they were just damaging, really damaging. They bat extremely deep, 1 through 9. That lineup is dangerous. So, and Tyler Beardsley, the pitching, he led the charge on the mound. When they get hold of the bats, they score in crooked numbers. So they have all season. They put big numbers up on the scoreboard, but they do damage in 1 or 2 or 3 innings in a ball game to get the job done, and they continue that sort of form on in the final, getting the job done. So, got to say congratulations to the Aces. That organisation has come a long way after being consistently the bridesmaid for the longest time. They've gone back to back. Yeah, that's right. They've built a roster that is the envy of most other teams, and it sets the bar even higher each year, and they did that this year. And there was teams that were very close, but they were still able to come out on top, and makes for an interesting next season, them chasing 3 in a row. And we've seen that teams in this league, with Brisbane winning 4 in a row, and Perth going back-to-back and winning 4 out of 5 early in the season. Early in the relaunched ABL, that teams can do that and get on a run. So it's they'll be the hunted again, and it's going to be really interesting. What it has set up, of course, is a return to a local club action for a lot of the ABL players, the Australian-based ABL players, and that's good news for local clubs and for those who love to get out to their local clubs, whether it be Melbourne, Sydney or Adelaide. Across our Flow network, there'll be a lot of players filtering back into those competitions now. Yeah, so some of the travel restrictions have meant that they can't quite get back into it straight away, depending on what competition or where they've come back to. So definitely in SA, in quarantine. So, but there's some really good action going on, and it has been all season throughout the local leagues, and some really closely fought competitions that are really hard to get a read on as to who's the favourite as we head towards finals, and a few finals races that will go down to the wire just to make it that far as well. Just before we wrap up today, quickly, for Team Australia, it is supposed to be Tokyo Olympics again. What's happening there? Have we qualified? Do we still have to qualify? Are we going to be able to qualify? Are the Olympics even going to happen? These are all questions that I'm hoping you've got answers to. Yeah, not a huge amount of answers, unfortunately. So I think every time you log onto the internet first thing in the morning, there's another headline around those Olympics with somebody coming out and saying it's looking good, it's not looking good. So it's very hard to get a read on. So, I mean, the advice to us as a governing body has very much been that it's going ahead at this point in time and plan as if it's going ahead. So in terms of Team Australia, they very much still have to qualify, and that's looking like being much closer to the Olympics than 12 months ago. It would have been, an end of March, early April qualification for a late July, early August start, whereas it's more likely to be a June or July qualification tournament. So that one's slated to be in Taiwan, which is a country that has had COVID pretty under control, but it's unfortunately all the movement and the other moving parts being that there's also an Americas qualifier that has to take place as well. So a team from that would get the opportunity to qualify directly, and another one, I think the runner-up from that would head to Taiwan for the last chance qualifier. So, it's a couple of step process. Just as we wrap up, shout out to everyone from the Glenelg Baseball Club, the big, in South Australia, this is big reunion going on tonight for the most successful season of all time in the SABL, I believe. I think it was 2000, 2001, Glenelg won 4 of the 6 senior premierships on offer. One of the other teams that didn't win a premiership got beaten in the grand final. And I think it was Division 5 that year, finished top of the ladder and went out in straight sets. So there were 4 flags going through the Glenelg Baseball Club. The club has got a big reunion on, I believe, at the Highway Hotel tonight, and I'll be there. That's Saturday night, for those of you listening to the replay, I should say. So not Friday night, Saturday night. The reunion will be on. I'm looking forward to it. Was part of that, and they're always good functions, the reunions.
It's plenty of success down at Glenelg over the years, but I wasn't privy to that. That's a dominant year.
It certainly was a dominant year, and I tell you what, it was a heck of a lot of fun being involved in the club back then. So there'll be a few people telling some tall tales tonight at the Highway Hotel. I'm pretty sure I'll come back with a report for you next week, Dave.
I look forward to it.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us again here on the Flow Friday Night Sports Show.